We also see that the disposable income, the pocket size of the Indians have grown over time. Why is that and how did that happen?
I would say disposable income went up because of economic activity, and a sudden exposure to the rest of the world triggered that consumption boom. What happened was that Indians changed or amended the global format to their needs.
Yes.
So even if a global burger chain came into India, it had masala in it, right? You want fast fashion, which means you want to discard very quickly, but you also want green products.
Yes.
So if you're creating more waste per capita, are you really being green? In many countries, including in India, cryptocurrencies are not legal. In some countries they are. But now digital currencies are coming up. I think it's safer to not allow it until the right kind of safeguards are in place.
They are, to my mind, very conscious about what they consume. Do you think that they are going to be much more conscious as consumers than the previous generations were?
They don't care whether you are a 5-month-old brand or a 50-year-old brand. The new generation is more less acquisitive, more utility oriented. Anything that can provide them convenience and utility, which does not involve them buying things, they're happy to do that. For example, one of the biggest rising market is furniture as a service.
Pranjal, this is very surprising to me because I'm getting a sense that we are getting back to the hippie era. Is it like
in a
revival of that time?
In a way.
Given a choice, if you had one, would you choose to be a Gen Z? Pranjal, welcome to Mocha Talks. A lot has changed in India over the last decade, and you have been a great student of how the Indian economy has been shaping. Now, there is a drastic change in how people consume in India before and after the pandemic. What is your observation?
So, thanks for inviting me for Mocha Talk, Sharmila. I think one of the things to understand before we talk about the previous 10 years is that India as a market economy is actually only about 35 years old. It was only in the early 90s when the economic reforms began, when foreign direct investment was allowed, that Indians started getting a feel of what foreign brands were as consumers. And this was, when many of us were growing up and starting our professional careers. So that was one inflection point when you suddenly in the 90s you have the quick service chains like McDonald's entering India and KFC entering India, which was a very big deal for us, for a lot of people in the country. You had a lot of local fast food chains, but this was something which was very new. So it was for Indians who felt that even a shoe brand was very, very local, to have suddenly a global brand that you saw in the movies suddenly in front of you was a big deal. So that was one important point. Then 10 years later, it was in 2002-03 when under WTO norms, India removed quantitative restrictions on imports. Now it sounds like a very big term, but essentially it meant that until then, if you wanted to import, let's say, glass like this, what would happen is that India had control saying that you can import only 10 glasses in a day, for example, or there would be a limit to every single foreign produced product to be imported into India. Now, under WTO norms, that had to change, saying that, look, you can't limit the quantity, but you can control the input, any product coming into the country with tariffs. So that had a huge impact, which means that suddenly a lot of foreign made products, from chocolates to clothes to shoes, were available in the Indian market and for the Indian consumer. The price was still high, but availability was there. So a lot of people who would go abroad only to buy these products and bring it back in their duty-free bags suddenly had access. So that was the first layer of the consumer, the more affluent consumer. But over the years, as Indian companies also started becoming competitive, these tariff restrictions came down, which means that the duty on these imported shoes, imported watches started coming down. So, which was the second important shift in India's consumer story, where you had foreign brands entering India, then foreign products entering India at an affordable price. So, the middle class consumer suddenly had access to not just the domestic brands, but also global brands which they had never thought would be possible in their lifetime.
Alongside this growth, we also see that the disposable income, the pocket size of the Indians have grown over time. Why is that and how did that happen?
See, economic growth has improved in India over the last 30 years. I would say that, see, between the time that we got political independence to the time when we reached a stage where we had economic independence was in the 90s. You know, under the Narasimha Rao government, when he was the Prime Minister, he made the big effort to open up the economy. So after, I think, Prime Minister Rao opened the economy, there was a lot of entrepreneurial spirits which were unleashed. Delicensing happened. I mean, again, it's people forget, but the fact is that until then, if you wanted to manufacture, let's say if you wanted to manufacture a cup, a ceramic cup in India,
Yeah.
you had to take permission from the government.
Yes.
And the government would decide not just what kind of cup you can make, but how many you can make and at what price you can sell.
Yeah.
So it was, we had a very controlled command economy. There was a certain reason for it, which, economists can argue about whether it was justified or not, but we'll not get into that. But the fact is that because entrepreneurial spirit was unleashed, funding for a lot of entrepreneurship improved. So generally the overall economic dynamism improved. That led to wealth creation and better opportunities for a lot of Indians. The private sector in many areas became very, very vibrant. So jobs opened, the IT sector opened up, the consumer retail market opened up, malls opened up. If you remember in the, in between, I would say 2000 to 2010, suddenly there was a, hyper mall and a shopping mall revolution in the country, which we didn't see. We got private airports. Now, private airports also allowed mobility of Indian passengers, consumers, citizens. Stores opened inside those. So it was a very big shift, and this meant that professionals who were getting jobs also had a disposable income. And the mindset of saving shifted towards consuming. Not everything was saved. A lot of it was spent because professionals who were growing up, whose career began in the 90s and 2000s, they felt that, look, we will consume like everybody else in the world. And the most critical part, so while disposable income rose, Sharmila, the important thing is that broadcast sector opened up.
Right.
We had access to foreign television, international shows, which we didn't get earlier. Now, which meant that you could then see the lifestyle as projected by mass media on your TV shows, right? Yeah. Now, once that happened, the Indian consumer, being what they were, felt that there's no reason why we should be anywhere behind the way the Western consumers were. While keeping in line with our own heritage and traditions. So it was a very interesting combination. So I would say disposable income went up because of economic activity, and a sudden exposure to the rest of the world triggered that consumption boom.
The time you mentioned, Pranjal, which is 2000 and later, is also when, after Y2K, the digital revolution started. And that slowly and gradually had an impact on everything, and you have actually lived through the life cycle of Indian media from start till now. So what are the few changes that you have seen psychologically in people in the space between digital and consumerism?
It was a kind of a self-reinforcing factor. You also saw the rise of a lot of new magazines.
Yes.
You saw a lot of foreign magazine brands enter in partnership with Indian publishing houses. So you could have the best fashion magazines, the best food magazines. Then there was this huge trend of food shows. Indians had never seen a food show until then. So everybody launched food shows. Domestic celebrity chefs were created, right? Now, which is the interesting part, that Indians took the global format but with an Indian flavor. So with whether you look at food or whether you look at clothing, attire, what happened was that Indians changed or amended the global format to their needs.
Yes.
So even if a global burger chain came into India, it had masala in it, right? Even if a chicken chain came into India, it was not a bland chicken. It needed to have some spicy, something which adhered and appealed to our palate. If you look at some of the attire brands, you will again see that while they were global brands, but almost every successful brand in the country made sure that they changed their product line for the Indian consumer. And remember, even today, but even I would say in the last 30 years, India remains the world's largest open market democracy.
Right.
So, which means that unlike many other countries, the huge consumption power rooted in an Indian way of life was constantly being reinforced. Remember some of the music channels when they launched?
Yes.
Right? So, the media point that you referred to, initially they were only playing Western music. Now, all of us love, if you've grown up with brands like Beatles and various other different rock groups, it was terrific.
Yeah.
But that was only a small part of the population that was consuming that music. Over time, they figured that the channels and the networks that were playing domestic music, whether in Hindi or Tamil or Bangla or Telugu, were doing much better.
Yes.
So all the music channels, and there was a proliferation, suddenly started playing domestic content. So remember, global format, global structures, but domestic content and domestic products, services which appeal to us. So that again reinforced the fact. So you would have, we used to have a category of video jockeys, I don't want to sound like, it was ancient time ago, but the fact was that anybody who was promoting a video show or a music show would dress in some of the best smart ethnic wear. So fashion trends began on media, and they were, approved and embraced by Indian consumers. But again, what Indian consumers were doing was also being reflected on the media. So I think it has been quite a interesting journey. But every 10 years, as you know, the trend and the perceptions change as a new generation comes up with their own ideas.
True, and India has a way of adapting international trends and then localizing it. Talk about fast fashion. It's a huge debate globally, and yet we have adapted it in a certain way. And we are also, there's a segment of the market which is thriving on fast fashion.
There's very interesting paradoxical trends and pulls over here. At one level, you want fast fashion, which is that, whatever I want to change my designs in 3 months and 6 months. At the same time, today's consumers are very alive to issues of sustainability, carbon footprint, what is my impact on the environment, am I using too much plastic? But there are contradictions here, which is that you want fast fashion, which means you want to discard very quickly, but you also want green products.
Yes.
So if you're creating more waste per capita, are you really being green? So you may say, well, I want to buy from a company which is ethical, which is practice sustainability. But as a consumer, instead of buying one T-shirt for 6 months, you buy 3 T-shirts in 6 months. You're also creating a waste cycle. So that's one. Similarly, if you look at quick commerce and e-commerce today, it's very easy to order, just tap. India has actually revolutionized the way we do it. And people in the Western world can't figure out how we do it at scale. What India has actually managed to do is at scale. It's not just for 2 million people, it's for 200 million people, whatever we do. But with every order that you make, there is a fuel cost, there is a traffic cost, there is a packaging cost, there is a waste cost. So there are very interesting trends in fast fashion and e-commerce, which are good in many ways, but they also have a sort of dark footprint, which I think sometimes consumers don't realize.
In your book, The Next New, which I have been reading, You do mention that brands of the future will have to have in ESG and the whole green ecology in its core, at its core to thrive. So, uh, is it not counterintuitive to the fast consumption culture?
It is. See, the book Next New Navigating the Fifth Industrial Revolution is about how technology technology, sustainability, and society are having an impact on companies. If we look at what is called the fourth industrial revolution, are a suite of technologies from AI to IoT to drones, etc., which were became mainstream about a decade ago. But when they were launched and they were adopted, a lot of it was about corporate and enterprise efficiency, either process efficiency or cost efficiency. At that time, nobody looked at the impact it had on people or the planet. Today, there is a pushback happening. So, in the fifth industrial revolution, the technologies of the fourth are being guardrailed by people and planet, by sustainability and society. And what does it mean? It means that whatever a company does, it has to ensure that people are not impacted. And how? What does it mean? For example, very simple and obvious example: if you're using a lot of digital commerce, you ensure that the data of the people and the consumers is safe and protected.
Yep.
10 years ago, nobody cared about personal data. You walk into a coffee shop and you gave your number to the person, and that list of phone numbers and mobile numbers was sold. I mean, there was a business of selling mobile numbers. For a Wi-Fi code, you would give your numbers, you get a code. Now that is being contained and constrained. You cannot just ask for private information, and if you do, you have to also report on how do you save it, how do you protect it, are you misusing it, what are you using that information for, because it's my information and you cannot demand. For example, there was a huge pushback because a lot of retailers would say, sure, here's your shirt that you bought, but can we have your number to process the bill?
Yes.
Right now, it's still happening,
yeah.
but then the government stepped in, the regulators stepped in and said, look, that's not, you cannot demand. If I say no, there were cases where the retailer would say, I will not sell it to you because my system prevents me from selling if I don't put a mobile number, and I want your mobile number. So there was a huge pushback. So there was this technology was being used to see what consumers are doing, but when you start pushing and demanding for private information,
yes,
as your right, you had to get that pushback. Similarly, the second part is the planet part of it.
Yeah.
Then the regulators came in also that, okay, what kind of packaging are you using? What kind of products are you selling? How are you under ESG norms? Every company was requested to map their carbon footprint.
Yes.
How do you use energy? How do you process the waste that is generated from your company? So all these things have started coming in. Now technology is enabling it, but technology is also a problem. For example, today the biggest consumer of technology, of energy today, is artificial intelligence.
Yes.
So when you ask about this contradiction, so there are a lot of contradictions. So at one level, AI is helping making organizations and enterprises sustainable, but the more you use AI, you're also harming the environment by demanding more energy. Now, of course, the solutions are to use more renewable energy. There are a lot of other options, but some of these contradictions are playing out as we speak.
Yeah. Same about crypto.
True. Well, crypto has a different issue, I would say, not so much about sustainability, which is of course there because, mining of some of the coins is a very expensive and energy heavy exercise. But I think the questions about crypto are really about accountability and transparency. So blockchain as the technology is a separate piece, but crypto, which is built on top of that technology, is a separate debate on whether it should be there. But I think there is now enough debate and discussion and solutions coming through where Now governments are coming in to say that in many countries, including in India, cryptocurrencies are not legal. In some countries they are. But now digital currencies are coming up, which have a mandate from the central bank and the government.
Yeah.
Now the problem with cryptocurrency is that you actually don't know who owns it, right? When you take a currency note, there is a sovereign guarantee that that piece of paper which says 500 rupees will be honored by an entity which is your national sovereign country, right?
Right.
But in crypto, you don't have that. Now, of course, we need to maybe change our mindset towards looking at how crypto will work. But the fact is that for a lot of people, especially in new markets and growth markets like India, where digital literacy has to really move very fast for consumers, I think it's safer to not allow it until the right kind of safeguards are in place.
Given the heavy mix of whatever is available in the digital world, the current demography of India is, it's like extremely attracted to what is available to it. Also, the global brands find this catchment very interesting. A lot of people want to push their products in India. We see the luxury world really looking at India because the Western consumers are sort of slowing down when it comes to luxury. So, what do you observe about the so-called Gen Z consumers in India? And are they more discerning? Because my sense is that they are not as quick on taking decisions as we perceive them to.
So let's take this in two separate parts. One is one question you asked about is about the global organizations looking at India as a market. Now, here, for centuries, actually, a lot of the from colonial times, I would say, the Western nations have seen India only as a consumer. Even when we were a producer, they destroyed our production capabilities. The British destroyed our production capabilities to ensure that we send only raw material to them and they sell as their finished product.
Yes.
Okay. Textile industry was physically destroyed in India. Looms were destroyed, physically destroyed, not just through tax incentives. India used to be a huge shipbuilding nation. We had very strong manufacturing capabilities and production capabilities in India. So while we talk about Make in India today, it's really a reawakening because, few hundred years ago, before we were colonized, we were very strong manufacturers in the world. But because of tax incentives, the British ensured as colonial masters that India becomes a consuming company, as a consuming country. We as consumers and they as producers. Now that equation they have tried to maintain till today. Now colonial masters may be out, but some of the companies still and the countries still have that mindset. I divide the world into legacy economies and growth economies. Yeah. Legacy economies who sort of colonized and reached and created their wealth and reached where they are today, but they've practically plateaued out, if not declining. We are in the growth economy phase, and I would say most of Asia is in the growth economy category, where we are rising. This is where the consumers are, which you were referring to. So the rise of people and young consumers is happening in India, China, and many parts of Asia. So today, the piece about India becoming a producer rather than just being a consumer is not being welcomed, I would say, across the world, right? Because it's like this: if I'm producing if I'm producing a certain set of products, and India used to buy a lot of that, now I stop buying those products because I'm making my own. Then that person who is making that product has lost my market.
Yeah.
Plus, if I make it and I sell it to a third country, I'm also hurting that person's market in a third market.
Yes.
Right? So India's economic rise as a producer is going to be difficult. There is a lot of effort being made to revive manufacturing in India, and I welcome that. And I think we have a long way to go, but there is a big shift. But India remains, as I said, one of the world's largest consuming markets. Per capita consumption is still low, per capita income is still pretty low. But if you see the growth trends, I think we will remain and become even a bigger force to reckon with. Uh, your second question was about Gen Z, right?
Yes.
Now, what do you want to know about Gen Z?
What I want to know is that, they are, to my mind, very conscious about what they consume. Unlike there's a lot of noise around Gen Z is going on, but if you observe them, they are much more aware as a consuming bracket, and they have a lot to choose from as well. So, do you think that they are going to be much more conscious as consumers than the previous generations were?
See, they have grown up in an era of abundance, relative abundance.
Yeah.
Many of the older generations grew up in an era of scarcity,
Yes.
right? Where, as I mentioned earlier, we didn't have enough brands, we didn't have enough choice, and the policies was that you take what you have. You're not going to go around shopping for multiple options of butter or multiple options of biscuits. You had 3 options basically for many of these categories. So they have grown up, I would say, anybody who was born in the 90s and 2000s, they have grown up in an open economy era where they see the best of Indian brands, they also see the best of global brands.
Yes.
And they have a choice.
Yeah.
They choose. But what is very interesting today, and several research and studies have demonstrated, is that the younger consumers today, I would say from 15 to 25 onwards, they also have a healthy disrespect for legacy brands. Just because the brand has existed for 100 years or is supposed to be a global giant or something which you actually have to fall at its feet and feel proud that I paid exorbitant amount to be attached to myself. Lot of that has dissipated. For people in our generation, I think it was very important to wear a shoe with a very promising global brand. But today that's not so relevant because the generation has grown up with abundance and they have choice. They don't care whether you are a 5-month-old brand or a 50-year-old brand.
So there's no aspiration attached to a big brand.
Yeah, because they seem to have more self-confidence about their own self-worth, and what they see around them is actually a very vibrant life around them. Things are pretty comfortable in many ways. And again, it's equal for tier 2, tier 3 cities. It's not just about the urban consumer. So they are ready to experiment. I think the digital social media platforms are also helping, and I know a lot of companies which are, investors are now creating domestic brands which are competing with some of the best global brands in India. Now, of course, so some of the bigger global brands are also manufacturing in India. It's not about manufacturing here. It's about the brand salience. Do you think that a brand which was very popular in Europe and US coming to India is going to be necessarily successful? No, not if they don't. They'll be successful only if they make themselves relevant to the young Indian consumer. There are several Indian brands, whether you look at snacks or attire or shoes, where people say, look, what I want is value for money, right? And I am not as enamored of the brand if that brand doesn't speak to me. So a lot of online social communities are created around a certain set of products. Well, I like that particular brand because, they speak my language. So I think it's a very interesting churn that you see today in the younger consumers' behavior pattern.
I also witness a burst of Indian IPs. There's like a factory of brands coming up. So what is the life cycle of these brands popping up on the digital, platforms? Do they graduate from one to another? What is there, enough interest in these new brands? What is your take on?
See, people will connect to a brand with experience, and if the brand is able to project the values that are relevant to that set of consumer. What is good is that just because, for example, Coke and Pepsi were the biggest, brands for beverages, but today they have to compete with a lot of local brands, not just in the beverage category, but also in the snacks and the food category, because nearly every city and every market now, a few days ago I went for lunch at a South Indian restaurant, and at the restaurant is above, and they were selling sweets and snacks on the ground floor. And I was looking at the shelves, and there was a bunch of new brands and very smartly packaged, very high quality products, which is probably only for that market in the city.
Like a hyper local brand.
Maybe it's a hyper local brand. Maybe it is only associated with that chain of stores across maybe 10 locations. But the regulars who go to that restaurant trust the restaurants, like the food, and they will be naturally inclined to buy a snack product well packaged from that. Now, you don't have to now, worry about, they don't think, no, I will only buy a brand because it is made by a global company. They are perfectly happy to buy a brand from a local store.
Yeah.
Because that brand has brought quality, brought certain level of hygiene, packaging to a standard which we all appreciate. So I think there is today a far more egalitarian approach or an ecosystem for new brands than ever before.
Amazing.
But the other point you said is, do they sustain and do they survive?
Yeah.
I think that's a separate piece.
Okay.
I think these brands, if they of course do not continue to maintain a certain quality or a connect with the consumer, they will also disappear.
Also, I think that, when it comes to overall pocket, how the pocket is being distributed when it comes to the younger generation, I see that more than things, they would like to experience. Taking from what you just said, that, they would like to experience stuff. So on platforms which sell tickets, I see a lot of hobby classes coming up, a lot of courses coming up, 100 rupee courses, 200 rupee courses. So there's a lot of education economy surrounding the youngsters. So that's very vibrant.
But see, that's part of an economic cycle of any country, right? When you improve your per capita income, when your lifestyle improves, you go from struggling for basics like roti, kapra and makan to enjoying life, to focusing on quality of life, because the new generations have grown up with, as I said, relative abundance. It's not as if there is no poverty in India. There is still a lot of poverty in India, but extreme poverty has been severely dented. So a lot of people have come out of it. Direct money transfer to people has ensured that they are not worried about surviving. But the middle class has become much fatter in terms of the number of people who are in the middle class, howsoever we define it. So that consuming class is very clear about what they want. Now, for them, if we look at their interests and if we look at what they want to aspire to, for them aspiration is not an issue because they have what they have. So they will go for improving their quality of life, their work-life balance. So you see that, in the whole work from anywhere syndrome, they're more interested in how do I make sure that my life, I am satisfied, content and happy. And whatever that brings me, whether it's classes, music, learning a language, becoming a chef, learning to try a new skill, I think they will do it.
That's an amazing life cycle that we've discussed over the last half hour or so.
But one more point I'll add, Sharmila, what you said earlier, just to add to that, because again they have grown up without worrying about the basics, they're not acquisitive by nature.
Yeah.
Right? So when I think you and I would have started a career, the first thing was, okay, how can I get a loan to buy an own house? How do I get my own car? Once you have that, you feel, okay, I'm feeling a bit secure now. I'm not so much worried about my career because, I've got my job, I've got my house, I've got my car. I don't have to worry about rental and I don't have to worry about struggling for a taxi.
Yeah.
But in the last 10 years, with the ride sharing and various other facilities available, actually you don't need to acquire. You don't need to have, you don't need to acquire, you need to use. So the new generation is more, less acquisitive, more utility oriented. Anything that can provide them convenience and utility, which does not involve them buying things, they're happy to do that. For example, one of the biggest rising market is furniture as a service.
Pranjal, this is very surprising to me because I'm getting a sense that we are getting back to the hippie era. Is it like
a way,
revival of that time?
in a way that where you didn't have to, you felt that, look, life is a stream of consciousness, right? And what you do is that, look, I'm going to be living. If I want something, it'll arrive. I'm not worried about something I'm not worried about missing out on something in life. I'm not worried that if I don't go, I will not get it. We are also the generation that saw landline to cell phone to, internet calls.
Yes.
There was a time when you had to beg the telephone company to take the money for the monthly bill, because if you did not submit the bill in time, and they were reluctant to do so, you had to take half a day off to submit your local landline. So there was a sense of scarcity all the time. There was always this fear, if I don't, I had to struggle to get a landline, I had to struggle to get a gas connection, I had to struggle to get anything.
Yeah.
But now that scarcity has gone. And when you talk about how India has changed, the supply side of many of the basics for the big cities, and I think for several levels of cities, that supply constraints have gone away.
Yeah.
Which has improved the sense of security and well-being for people, which allows them to now spend on items of discretion and enjoyment.
Yes. So given a choice, if you had one, would you choose to be a Gen Z?
Well, I think it's a mindset, right? It's not about the age. And I believe in some parts of my own consumption pattern, I think like a younger person, where I don't feel like buying houses. What's the point of buying a house? Why should I buy another car? I mean, there was a while when households, double income, no kids, would have 3 cars.
Yes.
Or, even today, a lot of people say, well, I want to have a country house here, country house there. But I would say that, I'd rather, if I have some surplus money, instead of buying another house or another piece of land, I'd rather spend it on travel, or I'd rather spend it on something which will improve my own sense of enjoyment. So some parts of me, I think like them.
So do you think this will also dismantle a lot of set societal norms, in the sense if people choose to travel more, if they want to really remain footloose, other dynamics would also change around relationships, how people cohabit, etc.?
I think that's happening. It's difficult to put a finger on it, but yes. So, for example, the rise of solo travelers.
Yes.
That's a very interesting trend. Young professionals, even I would say there are 2 categories of people, which is very interesting in terms of social shift. One is young travelers who would say, well, I earn my money. I know some people who would say that, okay, I'm going to work for 6 months and spend for 6 months and travel for 6 months, right? That's
Western.
One. It is, but it's again evolving into a very Indian style experience. Second category of people are those who say, okay, I'm going to work till 40 and then have enough for myself so that I can enjoy my own conversations, I can enjoy my own travel, I can enjoy what I've always wanted to do. I want to do horse riding, I want to do mountain climbing, I want to run my own cafe.
Yeah.
That cafe may or may not make profits for them, but they enjoy the idea of running a cafe. So why not? So that's how the society is changing. It also means that society is far more accepting, right? It used to be that you were accepted or respected only if you had a job in a government ecosystem, or you had a job with a global company.
Yes.
Right? Yes. Then there was a phase where if you started your own company, you would be respected. Oh, he's an entrepreneur. He must be very smart to do that. 10 years before that, if you started your own company, it was because, oh, maybe because that person's parents have a lot of extra cash, they have connections, they probably have a lot of unaccounted money, and he's just trying to live off that. So the entrepreneurship also changed the profile of the individual as they become, now a startup founder is seen as a, leader of the world, king or queen of the world.
Yes.
So yes, social trends, behavior, structures, and relationships are also, changing because of that. A lot of younger people they're happy to stay with their parents.
Yes. One would have thought that they would want to become more independent, discover themselves, move out. That was our dream, right?
Yeah, but look, I mean, there's also a practical sense to it, right?
Yes.
If you're comfortable living with your parents, and why not? And they give you the right amount of space and freedom within a family, you don't have to leave your parents to find independence. You can stay with your family, you can find the right kind of independence with them, and then also explore your life.
Yes. Pranjal, so, dynamic shifts from everything is interlinked with technology, consumerism, and finally coming to society as well. So, give me a sort of, your view on where you see things in 10 years from now. If I am an Indian born today, in 10 or 15 years, what is my typical life going to be like?
See, it's not fair to do any predictions. I can barely predict what's going to happen 10 months later, so 10 years is too far away. But I think
we love astrology, right? As
we
Indians.
love astrology, we love to predict, and we all want to read hands, and we want to, see what our palm says and what our stars say.
Yes.
But 10 years from hence, I think the acceleration in our self-confidence will be far, far more. The Indian citizen and consumer, right? We are consumers and citizens both.
Yes.
I see that in the last few years, there is a tremendous sense of confidence about what we are, where we have reached, where we have arrived. And that comes, and it might sound a bit arrogant, or it might sound that for a lot of the younger professionals or younger citizens, or consumers, they may have a very blasé attitude about, like, yeah, what's the big deal? It's, we live in a normal country. We are no better or worse than what's happening in the legacy economies, which is already here, as you can see. You travel, you see some of the best airports of the world are in India. You see some of the best, as a consumer, there is really nothing that India is lacking, right? So we've already reached a stage where we feel we're as good as the world. I think in the next 10 years, the sense I get is that we would be like, we are better than the world. There is a sense of doing what we are doing, nobody else can do. I mean, look at the fact that in just a few years of the government opening up the space sector, hundreds of millions of dollars of investment is coming in space tech startups. I would not have imagined that 30-year-olds are going to be doing some of the best work in space technology, sending up satellites for not just for India but for other parts of the world as well. It's a stunning shift that you see in confidence, self-confidence. So in the last few years, we've reached to the level of where the rest of the world is. And I think the next 10 years, in terms of achievement, abilities, success, mindset, thinking, we will say, well, we are better than the rest of the world in many, many ways. We are producing some of the best technologies, we are producing great products, high-end electronic stuff. There is still, again, a lot of way to go, but you're talking 10 years, right? So if we have become the third largest manufacturer of smartphones in the world in just 10 years, in another 10 years, irrespective of what technology or consumer electronics we think of, we would be on top of the world. So I think the next 10 years will see a super ego emerging from India in a positive way, where the average Indians will feel that we are now amongst not just the best, but maybe better than the rest of the world, based on achievement. Based on achievement. But I also see that there is also going to be the sense of people who, when you grow and become more successful, the society, some sections of it also lose the hunger and the drive to succeed. It's that when you don't have enough, you strive and struggle to get more. But when you have everything, sometimes you take things for granted and you don't want to change or improve or make an effort. So there are, in that sense, I would say there are two again contradictory trends, and again it happens in every era, that one part of the country will be like, I want to achieve and be the best and better than the world. Another one will say, look, I've got what I want, I have a nice life, I need work-life balance. If you talk to anybody who's in the hiring space, and they will tell you that when you want to hire, first question that the potential candidate asks is that, do I really have to come to office? Right? So now that's good. That's also a sense of confidence that I can get work, I don't have to come to office. But it also means that, look, office is not the world for me. So for people who are going to be super successful in their domain, I think for them, issues of work-life balance may not exist. Those who want to have a relatively more relaxed life will say, well, I want to do what I want to do for myself. I'm not here to change the world. So there will always be these two categories of people. But the overall sense of confidence in both these categories will be of supreme confidence of being an Indian, being in India, and perhaps seeing themselves as global citizens.
So the golden mean will be to be able to operate from and create from a sense of and a place of abundance in the coming
And
time.
abundance and a sense of self-confidence, which was lacking. We didn't have a lot to boast about till the 1990s. What were we confident about? Nothing. People were, struggling to get a decent job. People struggling to get very basics in place. We had two brands of vehicles and cars to, select from. Even if you wanted to buy those cars or a two-wheeler, you have to wait for 8 months. Right? So today, you don't forget about buying. You'll say, okay, I'm going to rent it for 20 minutes. So again, the point is that the next 10 years from here will be, I think, a far bigger leap for India, because a new benchmark and foundation has been set. So it's partly that hockey stick growth syndrome. So that will happen, but I think we'll, as a nation, as a country, as an economy, we'll also have to make sure that we don't have a K-shaped growth, right? Where those who have grow much faster, those who don't, I kind of, still stagnating. So the next level of effort for India to make sure that it is respected, or it really reaches its potential, is to ensure that the second half of the socio-economic strata, that also rises. And I think, which is happening, but can we do it fast enough? And with the right amount of effort, I think those will define what India will be in the next 10 years.
Thank you, Pranjal. Thank you for adding so much depth and context to Mocha Talks.
Thank you for inviting me. Love the conversation.